Some love stories don't fade. They echo in trees, in lakes, in silence. Helena and Daniel didn't just fall in love, they disappeared into it. This is a story about the kind of love that survives beyond time, beyond life, even beyond death. It's a story of a love so deep, so spiritual, that it transforms the one who feels it. This is the story of Helena and Daniel Morgan. Their story begins in the old town of Windermere, nestled in the quiet heart of England's Lake District. It's a place where the hills roll gently into the sky and the lakes shimmer like silver under the early morning mist. Windermere is calm, composed, reserved, just like Helena Thompson. Helena was the kind of girl who noticed the little things. The sound of birds in the morning. The way leaves changed color with the seasons. She loved old books, rainy afternoons, and the quiet kind of music that made you feel things you couldn't name. But more than anything, Helena loved her freedom. She was sharp, clever, a little rebellious, and fiercely independent. She knew the world didn't favor women like her, but she didn't care. She didn't want to be anyone's possession. She wanted to belong to herself. And then came Daniel Morgan. He wasn't like the boys Helena knew. He wasn't polite or quiet or careful. He was loud, bold, a little too sure of himself. His family was one of the richest in the region, owners of land, businesses, and old money. He drove fast cars, wore designer clothes, and walked like the world belonged to him. But behind all that charm, there was a loneliness in Daniel, a restlessness he didn't talk about. When Daniel first met Helena, he laughed. She was reading poetry under a tree, ignoring everyone at a friend's wedding. He tried to tease her. She didn't even look up. That's when it started. Daniel was used to girls falling for his charm. Helena was the first who didn't, so he chased. He brought flowers, left letters, followed her around town like a love-struck teenager. Helena ignored him at first, but slowly she started smiling at his jokes, laughing at his silly poems, talking to him under that same tree where they first met. What began as banter turned into friendship. Friendship turned into a quiet longing, and longing, as it always does, turned into love. But love, in the world Helena and Daniel lived in, was never simple. Daniel's family hated the idea of him being with Helena. She was from a working-class background, her father a retired librarian, her mother a nurse. They didn't have connections. They didn't come from money, and worse, Helena had a mind of her own. The Morgans didn't like that. Helena's family wasn't thrilled either. They knew the Morgans. They knew how people like Daniel moved through the world carelessly, without consequences. Helena's father warned her and begged her not to fall for him. But Helena wasn't a child. She knew her heart, and it belonged to Daniel. For a while, they made it work. They met in secret, spoke through letters, hid in bookstores and old parks. In those moments, it felt like the world had paused just for them. Daniel would read her Rumi. Helena would make him listen to her favorite indie bands. They planned a future, a small home near the hills, a quiet life full of books and love and peace. But peace, like love, is fragile. One night, after a family gathering, Daniel's father gave him an ultimatum: end things with Helena, or lose everything, his inheritance, his position, his future. Daniel refused. He walked out of the house, ready to give it all up. But Helena had been watching the cracks form for weeks. She saw the way Daniel struggled, torn between love and duty. She knew what walking away from his family would do to him, and so she made the decision for both of them. She ended it. Not with anger, not with blame, but with quiet, steady pain. She told him she needed to find herself, that they were too different, that their love wasn't enough. Daniel begged, he cried, but Helena didn't turn back, because she loved him enough to let him go. After she left, something broke inside Daniel. He stopped talking to his friends, stopped going to parties. He withdrew from the world. People thought it was just heartbreak, a phase, but it wasn't. Daniel left Windermere. He traveled aimlessly through the countryside, avoiding cities, avoiding noise. He slept in abandoned barns, walked barefoot through rain, and wrote poems in old journals. People who saw him said he looked like a ghost, thin, pale, with eyes that saw things beyond the visible. And then, one day, he stopped speaking altogether. To the world, Daniel Morgan was lost. But Daniel hadn't lost himself. He had found something most people spend their whole lives chasing, pure, unshakable love. He began talking to trees, to rivers, to the wind, not in madness, but in prayer. He would sit by the lake where he once held Helena's hand and whisper her name like a hymn. He wasn't waiting for her. He wasn't hoping to see her again. He had become love. Daniel's transformation wasn't just sorrow. It was awakening. At first, the loss was unbearable. He would stare at the stars and ask, "Why me?" He wandered through fields with Helena's letters pressed against his chest. He whispered apologies to the empty sky. Days passed with no food, nights with no sleep. But then, something shifted. The more he walked, the less he resisted. The less he cried, the more he heard the sound of his heartbeat, the rustle of grass, the hum of silence. Daniel started listening, not with ears, but with soul. He no longer missed Helena as a person. He began to feel her as an essence, in the way the wind wrapped around his shoulders, in the rhythm of the rain, in the warmth of the morning sun. He was no longer Daniel Morgan, heir to fortune and family pride. He was no one. He was everyone. The world had many names for him: madman, mystic, fool, saint. But Daniel didn't care. He would sit in the village square, eyes closed, lips moving in prayer, not asking for her return, but thanking the universe for having loved her at all. There was no bitterness in him, only gratitude and silence. At the same time, Helena's world was crumbling in a different way. She tried to move on. She married a man her parents approved of, a kind man, gentle, but not Daniel. She smiled at dinner. She kept up appearances, but her heart stayed frozen in time. Her marriage, though respectful, lacked soul. Her husband tried to understand her silences, tried to hold her when she cried without reason, but he always knew he was living beside a shadow. Helena spent her nights staring at the moon, holding a single photograph of Daniel. The world called her a loyal wife, but inside she was frozen in time. She began writing letters she never sent, pages filled with Daniel's name, poems that started as pain and turned into surrender. She wasn't waiting for him either. She knew he might be gone forever. But like Daniel, she had found love not as possession, but as transformation. They were apart in the body, but closer than most lovers ever become. The final chapter of their story came quietly. Years passed, and then one winter, Helena heard a rumor that Daniel was alive, that he wandered through Windermere's woods, whispering poems, blessing strangers, speaking in riddles. She left everything: her house, her husband, her life. On the night of the first snowfall, Helena walked barefoot into the forest. She followed a path she hadn't taken in years. No map, no bag, just a memory. She reached the old tree. It was still there, taller now, stronger. Beneath it, a small stone with Daniel's name carved gently into it. She found him under the same tree where they once read poetry. He looked at her, and for a moment, time dissolved. He smiled, not with surprise, not with bitterness, but with peace. Helena sat. She didn't cry. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, she felt whole. No more searching, no more holding on, just being. Knelt beside him, took his hand, and they sat like that until the stars appeared. That night, Daniel breathed his last. No pain, no drama, just stillness. She whispered his name once, softly, then lay down, and like Daniel, she slipped away not in pain, but in peace, they say. A soft wind blew through the hills that night. Animals stirred, the lake rippled without reason, and a gentle warmth filled the cold air. Two souls had become one, but those who believe in true love know they're together. Not in some fairy tale way, not in a house or a photograph, but in wind and water, in trees and thunder, in the silence that lives between heartbeats. This was never about a happy ending. It was about transformation. Daniel loved Helena until love became him, and Helena loved Daniel until she had nothing else left but love. In the years that followed, Windermere changed. People no longer feared love that defied logic. Parents told their children the story of Daniel and Helena not as tragedy, but as beauty. That love, real love, isn't always happy, isn't always physical, isn't always seen. Sometimes love is sacrifice. Sometimes love is madness, but always love is truth. A university student once found a leather journal near the tree. Its pages filled with Daniel's handwriting. Poems, prayers, memories. One line, written over and over again. Read, "I did not lose her. I became her." That journal now rests in a small museum in town, next to a sketch of Helena holding Daniel's scarf, smiling into the distance. Maybe you're listening to this and thinking of someone you've loved deeply. Maybe you're wondering if love like this still exists in the world. It does, but it doesn't always look the way we expect. It's not always flowers and kisses and stolen glances. Sometimes it's a memory you can't shake, a whisper you hear in your dreams, a name that makes your heart beat differently. That love, if it's real, doesn't die. It becomes you. So when you walk alone someday and feel warmth without a source, when you hear music in silence, when you cry for no reason at all, know that love is with you, not beside you, within you. Because Daniel and Helena didn't just love each other, they became love, and so can you. They say there's a thin line between madness and love. But maybe that's the wrong way to look at it. Maybe love, true love, isn't sane at all. Maybe it's not meant to be. Because love that changes you, breaks you, purifies you, that's not ordinary love. That's divine. And that's what Daniel and Helena found, not in each other, but in the space between them, in silence, in soul. This was their story. This was Helena and Daniel, forever.